Hello, everyone. This is Fadi, and I want to welcome you back to a continuation of this fascinating series about Sharia, or the Muslim Talmud. Today's episode will deal with what we call Madhabs, the 5 schools of persuasion. Again, madhabs in the plural, the 5 schools of persuasion. You probably, if you're dealing with Muslims, you've heard, I follow this madhab, or I follow that madhab, or according to my madhab. And what's that all about? Well, with me here to unpack all of this for us, hopefully in a simplified fashion that you can grasp as our viewers and benefit from, is our dear brother, Lloyd DeYoung. Lloyd, brother, I don't have words really to thank you for the amazing research that you've done. And I think you and I were talking earlier about the fact that you can't even find such seminars or such courses or such even resources, digitally speaking, that goes into the depth that you are doing, and we are basically collaborating here to unpack.
That is true. I searched for that and eventually had to write it myself.
Praise the Lord for that. So what are we talking about? For the benefit, I know certain things, but I don't want to just assume our viewers would know what we're talking about. What is it that we're talking about here when we mention madhabs, and what are these 5 schools of persuasion?
So briefly, within the Sunni world, there are 4 schools of fiqh. These are schools of jurisprudence, the legislative side of Islam. And then, of course, they recognize the Jafari school in the Shia world.
Correct.
So people know the term fiqh now. This is the jurisprudence, but the common term is madhab. They say, I belong to this madhab, I follow that madhab. This means that's the doctrine of taqlid. You are following, you're a follower, you're a muqallid. You are following the doctrine of taqlid, a scholar. And that scholar is connected to his scholar, who's connected to his scholar, who's connected to Muhammad, and Muhammad's connected to Allah. And that's how that unbroken chain, this isnad, if you will,
continues. Yeah, let me add something about the word taqlid. Is like imitation. You're like imitating your scholar, who imitated his scholar, who imitated, technically speaking, in a chain all the way to Muhammad.
Yes. Yes, correct. And this chain, you're not supposed to deviate. You're carbon copy. You're just a clone. And however, the term madhab, even though it's used in terms of a school of jurisprudence, it actually means a school of persuasion. But let's jump into the slides and we'll talk about it for a few minutes. Right. So we spoke earlier about these differences within the schools. However, these differences are not a contradiction. They don't create 4 separate religions, because if they were contradictory, even if they technically might seem contradictory, they are not 4 separate religions. They are equally valid alternative interpretations of the religious law of Islam. Muslims love to say it depends how it's interpreted. You must have heard that phrase before. Well, it depends how it's interpreted within the 4 schools, right? So we all know, for instance, for apostasy, that yes, you die according to strict Sharia. However, when you die and how you die, well, that's variable. They've all decided the ijma, the consensus, you die. The variability, right, the ikhtilaf, the difference, is when and how. Now, these schools all share a common legal theory that was asserted in the 9th century, or the 3rd Islamic century, AH, by Imam Shafi. Now, the scholars accepted Shafi's and the revelationists, right? So revelation is wahi, right? In Islam, what is revealed knowledge, revealed sources like the Quran is wahi. Even the Sunnah, the Hadith, is wahi. It is revelation. It's considered revelation, right? Like the Quran. So they accepted Shafi's principle of the overriding authority of the traditions. Prior to the arrival of Imam Shafi and his influence on Islamic law, the Hadith technically were not considered legal documents. They were not considered legal precedents, but he made them so. It was his influence. So he made them an overriding authority, even over the Quran, right? Of the traditions from the Prophet as evidence of the Sunnah. However, a practical application was subordinated to the scholarly consensus. So the scholarly consensus is the final understanding, the final definition, and the final application of this knowledge that came from the Sunnah, right? So everything is subordinated to the consensus of the scholars. From the middle 9th century, the idea gained ground that only the great scholars of the past had the right to independent reasoning in law, or ijtihad. These were the mujtahids mutlaq, of whom we spoke at length earlier. In the 10th centuries, a consensus was established in Orthodox Islam that future activity would be confined to explanation application and interpretation of the doctrine as it had been laid down by the mujtahids mutlaq. That was the framework that was done, and now they had to work within strictly that framework. Now, let's look at the word madhab, plural, madahib, a way of thinking. Now, this is the Encyclopaedia of Islam. This is the gold standard worldwide for Islamic academic study, and it's written by hundreds, thousands of scholars over more than a century, and it has Muslim scholars who contributed to this. Now, notice, it's a school of persuasion. It's a way of persuasion. No, it doesn't say here a school of jurisprudence. It says a school of persuasion. The 5 schools of law in Orthodox Islam, basically Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi, Hanbali, and the Jafari, the Shia school, which is recognized, right? So let's continue. Let's look at jurisprudence. Jurisprudence in the Encyclopedia of Islam contains words like ijma, ikhtilaf, and taqlid. Doesn't contain the word madhab, right? Sunnah, if you look at plural, sunnan, habit, hereditary norm of conduct, custom, a normative custom of the Prophet. This leads to orthodoxy. So notice orthodoxy, Orthodox Islam. The Sunnah is Orthodox Islam. So basically, these 4 scholars were the most persuasive. Their arguments were the most persuasive. And they therefore defined the orthodoxy within Islam. Let's go to the word understanding, knowledge, intelligence. The technical term for jurisprudence. The science of religious law in Islam, a science. Now, religious law is not a science in Western terms. Science in the Western terms would involve things like test tubes, for instance, but this is a completely different understanding of science. This is, well, we'll get to that. So in addition to the laws regulating ritual and religious observances containing orders and prohibitions, fiqh includes the whole field of family law, the law of inheritance, of property, of contracts, of obligations, criminal law, and procedure, and also constitutional law. Laws regulating the administration of the state and the conduct of war. The New Testament does not regulate property, inheritance, the conduct of war. Understand this is a political system, Nazism, communism, fascism. So fiqh relates to a full legal and administrative system, a full system of government. And I've covered that in the past. And whereas madhab is just a school of persuasion. And then finally, in older theological language, fiqh was used in opposition to ilm, the accurate knowledge of the legal decisions handed down from the Prophet and his companions. It was applied to the independent exercise of the intelligence, the decision of legal points by one's own judgment in the absence or ignorance of a traditional ruling bearing on the case in question. So the Quran is incomplete. It doesn't have everything that people need. It doesn't have specific rulings on everything. So they did the exegesis, and therefore the fiqh was created by these scholars. And to make sure there was no disagreement, of course, they created the ijma, the term faqih, which you used earlier. In its non-technical meaning, faqih denotes anyone possessing knowledge or fiqh of a thing, synonymous with alim or ulama, right? So in law, it became the technical term for a specialist in religious law. So there's no separation between church and state or mosque and state. The religious law is secular law. It is civil law. Again, Christianity has a moral law. It does not have a civil law. So, yeah. Any comment from you, Fadi?
Not at all. I mean, I just wanted to, second what you're saying. I mean, we're talking about fiqh, faqih, fuqaha. All of these terminologies are things that I'm used to hearing, of course, growing up.
Yep. And now, because fiqh is knowledge, okay, let's look short diversion on this word knowledge. Let's have a look at 1 Timothy 6:20, and you can find this also Strong's G, that's Greek, 1108. Okay, 1 Timothy 6 verse 20, O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings, or pointless and empty talk and contradictions of what is falsely called knowledge. If we go into the ilm, the science of Islam, you will find that ilm is the knowledge, right? The knowledge, the science. Notice it is extensive in Islam if we go into it, and the Bible warns about this, what is falsely called knowledge, and oppositions of science, falsely so-called science. By professing this false knowledge, by professing this false science, some have strayed from the faith. And Notice the word gnosis, Greek noun for knowledge, best known for its implication within dualistic Gnosticism, which signifies a secret spiritual knowledge. And we've discussed already that the Islamic scholars profess to have secret spiritual knowledge, which is something that is off limits to the lower lay Muslims. And in fact, I mentioned those 4 levels. So they have insight into humanity's real nature. So understand there's a parallel here with the gnosis and what this ilm, this fiqh is. I'll pause here, Al-Fadi.
Wonderful. At some point, hopefully, we can address also the role of the Sufi, orders when it comes to this as well. But thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you and appreciate the knowledge that you are sharing with us. And hopefully, everyone is benefiting from this. Make sure everyone to subscribe to his channel, subscribe to ours, support him, and also we hope you consider supporting us as well. But we want to be a blessing to you. Make sure you can take this knowledge that we're sharing with you and share it with others as well. Until we meet next time, have a blessed day. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel CIRA International and click on the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or go live. I would also like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking the link right below. By doing so, you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you where you can give to our channel. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.